Right, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. The Sergeant at Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President,
All right, Senators, for our invocation this morning, we are very pleased to have somebody who is no stranger to this chamber, Reverend Dr. Frances Draper, who has semi-retired from the church, but also many know from Afro News. She is the pastor emeritus at Freedom Temple AME Zion Church, which is located in the Fightin' 46th District. So, without further ado, please rise for the invocation.
Good morning, Senators, and thank you, Senator Ferguson, for this invitation and this privilege this morning. In 1922, my grandfather, Carl Murphy, succeeded his father, John, as publisher of the Afro-American newspapers, Maryland's oldest black-owned business. Grandfather Murphy not only wrote hard-hitting editorials, but he was a prolific writer of short, heartfelt prayers. So this morning I would like to share two of his prayers and one of my own, and if you're so inclined at the end of each prayer, would you join me in saying amen? Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, our work requires us to make many decisions. Help us that we do not substitute what is expedient for what is right. Help us that we do not accept a little of what we know is wrong in order to obtain a little of what we think is right. In decisions affecting truth and right, help us in good temper without emotion, in quiet deliberation to stand. And the people said, Oh dear God, help us to do our work without bluster or brag, or what we call tooting our horn. Let us remember that whatever comforts or material things we accumulate in life are only loaned to us for a season. And when we are inclined to talk of I and glory in me, help us to remember that thou hast put millions of planets, stars, and suns in orbit, and so far as we know, they make no sound. Amen. And finally, loving Father, thank you for hearing our prayers. You know our many concerns about the economy, education, safety, the unemployed and the underemployed, affordable housing and accessible health care, taxes, transportation, bills, budgets, and so much more. We pray that you give the men and women in this room the determination of Deborah, the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Samson, the patience of Job, the boldness of Esther, the faithfulness of Paul, and most of all, your love for your people. And we all say together, amen.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Wonderful. Yes, recognize the senator from the 45th District.
Mr. President, just let me be very clear that this was a treat. I did not know that I would see Dr. Draper when I walked into this room this day, but I look at this woman as a person who loves Baltimore. I look at her family as a family who loves Baltimore. I include Dr. Draper as a mentor, as a friend, but more importantly, someone that I respect because every day I pick up my afro, I know that she loves our people. So I say thank you, Mr. President, just for this opportunity, and it's always good to see you, Dr. Draper.
And Senator.
And Mr. President, if we can journalize the remarks.
Perfect. Excellent. Wonderful. Without objection, most certainly we will journalize the wonderful invocation this morning and thank Reverend Dr. Draper for those remarks. And thank you. All right. We do have a very special day today, very special day. We're going to do one quick, we're going to do a resolution before we jump in. If we could recognize the senator from the 41st District.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I forgot to call the roll. I'm trying to move too quickly. That's my fault. If we could, has everyone recorded their presence in the chamber? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 43 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. And to begin with, Senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having now been all marked present, esteemed colleagues, it's my pleasure to introduce the Baltimore Northeasterners. The Baltimore Northeasterners was established in 1950. It is one of 13 chapters in the northeastern and Midwest regions of the United States of America. It is one of the oldest social clubs for African American women, fostering a spirit of friendship, love, sisterhood, and charity. I am a proud member, and I am happy to celebrate our 75th anniversary during Women's History Month. And joining us on the floor is National Corresponding Secretary Juana Brooks and my sister and member, Judith Lynn Cox.
Welcome.
Madam Clerk, please, I humbly ask that you read the resolution at the desk.
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers sincerest congratulations to the Northeasterners Baltimore City Chapter in recognition of celebrating 75 years of civic and community service. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 20th day of March, 2024.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the ladies of the Northeasterners Incorporated Baltimore City Chapter, congratulations on 75 years of civic and community service. We appreciate you. Oh, and in the gallery as well, we have a number of the members, so thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, and thanks for your work. Excellent. All right, wonderful. Thank you. All right, so today is a very special day. It is the day that we award First Citizen, so we often try to do this during the week after crossover when things are a little bit slower, because it's always such an important opportunity to recognize individuals who have or who continue to have such an imprint on the state of Maryland. So today, we honor distinguished Marylanders with the annual First Citizen Award. As is the custom, these awards are presented by the State Archivist of Maryland. So it is my pleasure to introduce Elaine Rice Bachman. Elaine has been State Archivist since 2021, but for many years as Curator and Director of the Maryland Commission on Artistic Property. She's worked tirelessly on the care and display of the artwork here in the State House, as well as the exhibits that tell the story of this building and this complex. I would like to welcome State Archivist Bachman to the rostrum.
President Ferguson, members of the Senate, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Some 32 years ago, the previous Senate President, Mike Miller, collaborated with the then State Archivist, Edward Pappenfuss, to create an award for distinguished citizens of Maryland. The selection of Charles Carroll of Carrollton as the symbol of this award was a natural choice. Carroll was one of Maryland's 4 signers of the Declaration of Independence, who also served in the Maryland Senate. His support of independence through his debate with Daniel Delaney in the Maryland Gazette in 1773, using the name First Citizen, gave the award its name. Dr. Pappenfuss also worked with then Speaker Casper Taylor to create awards to be given by the House of Delegates, the Speaker's Medallion and the Thomas Kennedy Award, named in honor of the delegate from Hagerstown who sponsored the so-called Jew Bill, which in 1826 gave Jewish people the right to hold office in Maryland. And Mr. President, if I may take a point of privilege to acknowledge my archives colleague and mentor, Mimi Calver, who is on the floor today, who has staffed every aspect of the creation and production of these awards for both chambers for the past 30 years. Thank you, Mimi. Since 1992, it has been the privilege of the Maryland State Archives to present on your behalf the First Citizens Awards of the Maryland Senate, recognizing individuals who have committed themselves to public service and civic engagement through debate, legislation, and governance. And now to today's awards. A free press is essential to our democracy. A free Black press is essential to making that democracy accessible to all. In the words of our first recipient in describing the importance of the Black-owned press, if we don't have good quality journalism, then we are subjected to opinions and stories that don't benefit us. And she speaks from experience. Reverend Dr. Francis Murphy Tony Draper is the publisher and CEO of the Afro-American Newspapers, a media company that has been providing that quality journalism from the Black perspective since 1892, when the Baltimore Afro-American was founded by her great-grandfather, John H. Murphy Sr., a man once enslaved whose purchase of a printing press developed in the longest family-owned African-American newspaper in the country. Dr. Draper represents the fourth generation of the Murphy family to guide the Afro and the first woman to serve as its publisher. She has served in that capacity since 2018 and prior to that as president. Born in Baltimore into a family filled with generations of distinguished public servants and philanthropists, Dr. Draper is a graduate of Frederick Douglass High School and Morgan State College and earned master's degrees from Johns Hopkins University, the University of Baltimore, and Loyola College. She attended St. Mary's Seminary and University and received her Doctor of Ministry degree in Preaching and Leadership from the United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio. Widely known as Pastor Tony, she is the founding pastor of the Freedom Temple African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church in Baltimore, formerly known as John Wesley AME Zion Church, from which she retired in 2022 and now serves as pastor emeritus. Dr. Draper's commitment to the community has been demonstrated throughout her career, starting with teaching in the Baltimore Public Schools, through to her service on many boards, including her alma mater, Morgan State University, to which she was appointed to the Board of Regents by Governor Glendening in 1995 and served for 24 years. She is also a founding member of Word in Black, a conglomeration of 10 legendary Black publishers that supports journalism projects focused on solutions to racial inequities. Racial inequity in the media has influenced public opinion and public education throughout history. In Maryland, the Afro has been dedicated to balancing that historical narrative, broadening the scope of how Black life is documented in the press. In Dr. Draper's words, "It's not that the Afro didn't report on crime and other things, but we reported on so much more. If it weren't for the Afro, we wouldn't know what it was like for Black soldiers to serve in World War II. If it weren't for the Afro, we wouldn't know what it was like for Jesse Owens to be at the Olympics, or what it was like for Jackie Robinson to break the color barrier." And importantly, the Afro documented not only the most famous Black Americans, but also saw the value in every person's story. Dr. Draper remembers her mother encouraging readers to send their own histories and photos to the paper, to chronicle the everyday lives that may not seem extraordinary, but that represent Black history nonetheless. As she wrote in an October 2023 editorial to the Baltimore Sun, in response to the suppression of Black history being taught in schools, "The fact of the matter is, Black history is American history. Denying the truth does a disservice to our students and weakens their educational potential. Many of the ongoing efforts to strike Black books and Black history from record are purportedly designed to protect children from history that makes them feel bad, like slavery or the fight for civil rights. But it is important to think about what it means to feel bad in the context of our history." She continued to say, "The realities of American history are nothing to be afraid of. Each tragedy, triumph, and truth in our nation's story offers lessons for our students to see what shaped our society and how we can learn from the sins of the past." She wrote, "As a Black woman, it made me feel bad when I faced discrimination in various forms throughout my life. It made me feel bad when I couldn't try on clothes in a major department store. It made me feel bad when I learned about the enslavement of my ancestors. It made me feel bad to see the lifeless body of Emmett Till when I was only 7 years old. But in spite of those feelings, I never lost sight of the value of learning of our historical truth." The Afro has brought that historical truth to readers for over 130 years. Today, it continues its mission through multiple social media platforms and live programming. It is continuing to amplify the stories that galvanize society around civil rights, the stories of Freddie Gray, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor. And the Afro has been a training ground and launchpad for journalists working around the world, with its own reach now far beyond Baltimore and Maryland. As Dr. Draper has said, our mission is the same, the way we do it just evolves. The Afro's past, present, and future will soon come together in their new home, the historic Upton Mansion in West Baltimore. the largest nationally recognized Black historic district in the country, which will house Afro Charities and will include their archive of over 3 million images, original newspapers, thousands of letters, rare audio recordings, and other ephemera related to the publishing business. The Maryland State Archives has been honored to temporarily house the Afro Archive and work alongside the staff of Afro Charities to provide support for the digitization and preservation of this historic collection in anticipation of their move. Reverend Dr. Tony Draper's life and career embody the critical and historical intersection of the Black church, the Black press, and civil rights, an integral partnership that has enabled the slow march toward a more equitable society. It is my honor to present Reverend Dr. Francis Murphy Tony Draper with the First Citizen Award.
I'm going to move this down. It's all yours.
Now, a preacher that's lost for words. Wow, what a surprise. Thank you so much. I had no idea, and even when you started reading, I was like, okay, that sounds a little familiar. But this is a beautiful award. Many of you know, especially in the business that I'm in, you know, we get a lot of awards, but I know people say this, but this award, wow, is like none other. So thank you, President Ferguson. Thank you so much. Thank you to the members of the Senate. I will cherish this forever, and I just want to say before I sit down, my name is on it, and I appreciate that, but it belongs to Team Afro and to the citizens of Maryland, especially those who reside in Baltimore City. God bless you. Thank you so much. At the mic, but when you've been married for 50 years, you lesson to self. I also couldn't do it without my husband, Andre. We celebrated 50 years in January of marriage. Thank you, Andre. Oh, I got flowers. I have flowers too. Oh my gosh. You all are just too much.
Before I invite our state archivist back up again for our second award, it's always, my favorite part is trying to build the surprise, and so we had to keep it really, we had to beg Dr. Draper to be here on this day. She was here for the First Citizens Award last year to give the invocation, and so when I walked in this morning, she said, "Oh, I'm so excited to be back to hear the First Citizen Award," which was so funny, and lo and behold. So we got it done. We got it done. Without further ado, thank you, and could invite the state archivist back up.
Sneaky, aren't we? Marvin Mandel's life spanned nearly 100 years. He was born in Baltimore between the World Wars in 1920 and lived until 2015 when the country was being led by its first Black president. In the arc of that life, bridging the 20th and 21st centuries, Mandel stepped into the arena of Maryland government where he remained for over 25 years, ultimately reshaping nearly every aspect of the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. He has been called the architect of modern Maryland. To describe the scope of changes put in place by Marvin Mandel between 1969 and 1979 during his term as governor, the state's first Jewish governor, and the first Speaker of the House of Delegates to go directly from that position to the office of governor, is not possible, so I'll only name a few. The reduction and consolidation of 250 state agencies and bureaus into departments, with department heads having greater authority as members of a cabinet. The creation of the Department of Transportation, led by future Governor Harry Hughes, to replace what one reporter called the highway-happy and hopelessly corrupted State Roads Commission of the Agnew era. Creation of the Maryland Transportation Authority and the purchase of Friendship Airport, now Baltimore-Washington Thurgood Marshall International Airport. Creation of the Department of Natural Resources, creation of the modern district court system, creation of the Court of Special Appeals, now the Appellate Court of Maryland, creation of the Office of the Public Defender, establishment of an independent judicial nominating committee, establishment of the Maryland Code Revision Commission to modernize the annotated code of Maryland laws, creation of the shock trauma system, the first of its kind in the country, the establishment of a state school construction program promising total state funding for new schools, creation of the law that provided police more control over enforcement of handgun possession, creation of the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund as part of a major car insurance reform over strong industry opposition, to name a few. Governor Mandel was renowned for his ability to bend the will of the legislature. Donald Hutchinson, a member of the House of Delegates from 1969 to 1974 and the Senate from 1975 to 78, recalled in 2015, Mandel was so successful in moving the legislature to do what he wanted it to do that on one day, when he was to address the House of Delegates, Speaker Thomas Hunter Lowe had us all wear arm slings to demonstrate to the governor how much we recognized his arm twisting. He was a master. On each of your desks is a gift from Governor Mandel, a paperweight that, although created in 1973, still serves as an emblem of his transformative legacy. It is created from the marble steps of the Court of Appeals building, erected in 1903 on what is now Lawyers Mall, which was demolished in 1973 to be replaced by the new Department of Legislative Services building, a department created under Mandel's own direction during his term as Speaker of the House from 1963 to 69. It is an object symbolizing the past that has been reshaped to represent the future, just as Mandel himself reshaped Maryland government for the 21st century. The continuum of that momentous change is now demonstrated over 50 years later as yet another larger Department of Legislative Services building is erected in that same spot. Today, the Senate honors the governor who reformed Maryland state government into the modern and effective agencies and departments that we all work with today. Mandel's legacy is unique, complicated, and unparalleled by any other figure in Maryland history. It is a legacy and a leader that deserves our recognition. It is my honor to posthumously present Marvin Mandel with the First Citizen Award. It will be accepted on behalf of Governor Mandel's family by the Honorable Judge Alan M. Wilner.
Well done. Well done. Good morning, everyone. That's better. Thank you. Mr. President Ferguson, State Archivist Bachman, members of the Maryland Senate. I'm delighted, really, to join you in celebrating the presentation of this First Citizens Award to former Governor Marvin Mandel by accepting the award on his behalf, which I shall forward to his daughter, Ellen, his only remaining child, who was unable, unfortunately, to be here today. It is a well-deserved honor to a man who knew and truly cared about the welfare of the state and all of the people in it. I had the privilege to serve as counsel and chief legislative officer to Governor Mandel and could see firsthand his devotion to the true meaning of democracy and beyond constitutional equal protection, as well to fundamental fairness for all of the residents of the state. I leave it to Elaine Bachman's comprehensive recounting of what Governor Mandel did to bring the state government squarely into the last half of the 20th century. We now take for granted what was truly innovative and historic then. Working closely with your predecessors in the General Assembly, all three branches of the state government were restructured to serve better the citizens of Maryland. In the short time that I have, I would mention only two innovations that came from Governor Mandel and with legislative approval were enacted into law. I mention these two because they directly affected public safety. And I urge you, when the session is over and you have more time, to read the history. Read the history of these things. The first is the creation in 1972, initially by executive order, followed the next year by legislation, of the shock trauma unit. That was not easy. We take it now for granted. But Governor Mandel fought tooth and nail with the entrenched medical establishment at the University of Maryland to get it done. They opposed it in every way they could because it was cutting into their turf. Marvin's only substantial medical ally was a gentleman by the name of R. Adams Cowley, after whom the unit is named. How many lives have been saved because of Marvin's courage, his foresight, his tenacity, fighting the golden hour between life and death. That unit treats 6,500 emergency patients every year. 6,500. So imagine in just 10 years, the lives of 65,000 people were saved. Is that not worth a thank you, Governor? The second thing is something as mundane, but really critically important as automobile insurance. Back in the days, automobile insurance companies had very restrictive and blatantly discriminatory underwriting criteria. With rare exception, if you were black, older than 50, younger than 30, or a divorced woman, you could not get auto insurance in the regular market. Thousands of Marylanders at the time were driving without insurance because they couldn't get it, putting themselves and thousands more at risk. The governor, unconvinced that there was a legitimate basis for that kind of discrimination, tried to get the companies to loosen their underwriting criteria, to no avail. I'm missing one page. Pardon me. So Marvin said to the companies, well, if you won't do it, we will. And he made the case to the General Assembly, and with his energy and guidance, your predecessors enacted MAIF, the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, which was authorized to insure drivers excluded for all the wrong reasons by the biased companies. And that made possible mandatory insurance coverage for all drivers. Within 6 months, MAIF was up and running, and quickly thousands of Marylanders wrongfully excluded from the regular market were able to get insurance for the protection of everyone, drivers and pedestrians. The private companies were apoplectic. An army of lawyers from Chicago descended on Annapolis to kill the proposal. Marvin was labeled a communist, a destroyer of private industry. It's all been written up, and I urge you to read the history of that. It is a history of political courage on the part of the governor and the General Assembly both. That kind of initiative started when Marvin was still in the legislature, and it continued unabated when he became governor. one last comment. In sharp contrast to what we are witnessing today elsewhere in the country, of people who prefer to curse and accuse one another of everything from stupidity to treason, Marvin believed in listening and giving fair thought to what others had to say. After all, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Marvin, as hopefully you do, saw his colleagues as decent public servants, some of whom simply had different views, that in most cases, though not all, were subject to reasonable compromise. He was not one, as a knee-jerk reaction, to say, my way or the highway. That was not him. He was a dedicated Democrat, but he did not regard Republicans as an enemy. Indeed, some of the Republican legislators were among his closest friends, even when they disagreed with him, which they often did. But they would help each other whenever they could. Last thing. It was a wonderful thing that a funeral service held 3 weeks ago for the former First Lady, Barbara Mandel, Bootsy as she was known, a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. And at that funeral service, the principal eulogist gave a beautiful, beautiful, meaningful eulogy to Barbara. That eulogist was Yumi Hogan. We are special here in Maryland. We are special. And Marvin Mandel helped us get that way. This award is well deserved, and I accept it on Marvin's behalf. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for indulging us for this very special award. It always is a reminder of the amazing work that is happening and helps us to get some perspective here as we go into the final 20 days of session here. We get to learn from some great leaders and former leaders. On behalf of Marvin Mandel, we are joined by Bill Cox and his wife Paige, who were very close friends of Governor Mandel, Tom Petticord, who was Governor Mandel's legislative staff, Bruce Bariano, who was a very close friend of Governor Mandel, and of course, Judge Alan Wilner, who just addressed our chamber. Thank you all again for being here, and thank you for your work. It's a beautiful day here, and thank you to our state archivist, Elaine, thank you for all of your great work, and it is always top-notch, and thank you, Mimi, for everything, for your office, your staff, everything. It is just always an amazing addition every year, so thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you. Excellent. Perfect. All right. So we don't have too much work today. We are able to we'll just transition back in. Let's see if, are there any introductions that folks have before we, yes, Senator from District 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to introduce my shadow of the day, Cassandra Day. She has been a teacher with Frederick County Public Schools for 29 years. And she is considering a career transition. She's part of the Emerge program. So she is here for us to educate and inspire her to run for public office.
Well,
Thank you.
we appreciate you shadowing today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Yes, Senator from District 11.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like the body to welcome Tori Garbarino, who I think is up there. She's shadowing me for the day also, and she is a freshman at the University of Maryland College Park. Wonderful. Just interested in public policy and wanted to see what it was like down here.
Excellent. Welcome. Enjoy your visit. Senator from District 28.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'd like to welcome my intern for this year, Tyler Batiste. She's a junior political science major at Morgan State University in the balcony in front of you, Mr. President.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for your work. All right. Any further introductions? Senator from Montgomery County?
This would be appropriate for some sad news? Or later? Okay.
Please.
Okay, well, let me just, it's a challenge to pivot from such an uplifting celebration for Citizen Award ceremony to some sad news. A former member of this body, former senator from District 15, Larry Levitan, passed away this morning. For those of you who know, Larry, just by a little background, Larry served in the House of Delegates from 1971 to 74, then came over to the Senate and served in this body from 1975 to 1994. From 1979 to 1994, for 15 years, he chaired the Budget and Taxation Committee, the longest serving B&T chair in the history of the Senate. And I would just kind of on a personal note, a few things. Number one, when I first ran for political office, the very first Feldman sign that went up was on the Levitan property in Potomac, and even today we have a portion of River Road in Montgomery County named after Senator Larry Levitan. I happen to live right off of that road, and so there's not a day that I don't drive out of my house to wherever that don't pass by that sign. So he will be missed. That's very sad news, and I'd ask the Majority Leader later to adjourn in his honor and in his memory. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. Certainly was an incredible public servant and worked hard for the people of Maryland, no doubt about that. We will certainly adjourn in his honor today. Senator from Carroll County? Was there? Nope. Okay. All right. Any further business for the chamber before we? Yes, Senator from the 3rd District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to invite the body tomorrow to the celebration of Purim, sponsored by the Jewish Caucus. It will be in the Cade Room from 8:45 to 9:45. Just a very short story on Purim. Purim is in honor of Queen Esther, who hid her Judaism. She was the queen during the Persian Empire, and her cousin Mordecai discovered a plot by a bad guy by the name of Haman to murder her husband, the king, as well as wipe out the entire Jewish population, a reoccurring theme in our history. Nevertheless, because of her power and influence and Mordecai's ability to identify this, she was able to stop that plot, save her husband and the Jewish kingdom. So why do we eat Hamantaschen? That little triangular pastry. Well, Haman represents the evil Haman. Tash means weaken in Hebrew, so weaken Haman. Also, the original Hamantaschen had poppy seeds, so since, as legend goes, Esther was kosher, so she ate a lot of seeds. But it is a celebratory event. We celebrate some of the more traumatic events in our history by being joyful, tell the story, enjoy food. So please join us in this celebration. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that reflection. Thank you. And we look forward for tomorrow's gathering. And it was 8:45. Is that correct? In the Cade Room. Is that correct? Okay. Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you, Senator. Recognized Senator from District 11.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would ask that we journalize the good
Sure.
senator's remarks.
Without
if
objection,
possible.
we will journalize those remarks. Yes, thank you very much.
I also would like to, is it appropriate to announce a meeting after this session?
Let's hold on
Okay.
to it for just a second.
Okay.
We're almost there. Almost there. Any other introductions? Any other guests? If not, so be considered the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We just have one order of business today, which is a special order calendar, number 64. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 537, Senator Feldman, Cannabis Licensee Locations Restriction. Question is on the adoption of the amendment offered from the floor by Senator Charles.
All right, question before the body is the amendment that was offered on the floor at the prior, I believe on Monday, potentially on Monday. So recognize the maker of that amendment. Does the senator have potentially another amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, after further consideration and conversation with the chair, and we're pulling back that amendment and made some additional changes and have another amendment to offer.
All right, the senator's moved to withdraw the prior amendment. The amendment is now withdrawn. The senator has a new amendment. Pages will distribute the senator's new amendment. All right, senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment number 1, on page 1 of the bill on line 8, after requirements, inserts requiring a political subdivision to grant a waiver to certain zoning requirements to a licensed cannabis dispensary that was operating before a certain date. Amendment number 2 in the Finance Committee amendments in line 6 of Amendment 2 strikes 2,000 feet and substitutes 1/2 mile. On page 4 of the bill, after line 11, insert a political subdivision shall grant a waiver to an ordinance that provides a distance requirement for dispensaries under the section for a licensed dispensary that was in operation before April 1, 2024. I move that we adopt these amendments, Mr. President.
All right, the senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll take this as a friendly amendment,
All right.
and I appreciate the work of our colleague to refine this amendment. Thank you.
All right, excellent. On the amendment, any discussion, any objections from the floor? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 537 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, that does it for the day. Let's check in with our Chair of Finance schedule today.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are scheduled at 1 o'clock today for 8 bills. They're all sponsor only. It should be a quick hearing day. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee will meet at 1 p.m. today. We've got 9 bill hearings. I think it'll be relatively quick as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, Chair of Budget and Tax.
Thank you, Mr. President. As soon as the Rules Committee ends, so if you'll stick around, we're going to, which I don't think will be too long, we will meet in the old House chamber for a quick voting session.
All right, excellent. Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will not meet today.
Is there something old Senate chamber? Okay. Either. I just don't know what they have going on. That's my Senate chamber. All right, let's make it the Senate just in case, because we know the schedule at that one if that works. Okay, we'll make sure it's cleared. So, excellent. All right, the chair of the Rules Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If the Senate Rules Committee could meet in the Silver Room right after we adjourn, I would appreciate it. Thank
Excellent.
you.
And just to note, the number of bills that are in rules, that some are, I believe, a number of Senate bills. These are, like, for the most part, bills that the House has passed. While they will go to committee, and of course, chairs certainly have discretion, but these will likely be sponsor-only hearings. So keep that in mind. While they're coming out, because it's already one is passed, and we want to make sure the Senate bills have the opportunity to move along as well. But we don't, we want to be very mindful of the hearing time. Let's see if there are any other. Yes, Chair of the Baltimore County Delegation.
Actually standing up for Joint Ethics. We'll be meeting tomorrow at 8:45, so Joint Ethics.
Excellent. Any other? Yes, Minority Whip? Let's see if there are any other announcements. Any other announcements? Yes, Senator from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Prince George's County, 5 o'clock this evening, Neal Conference Room. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other announcements? If not, Senator from Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier, I didn't want to step on the announcement, so I thought I'd just make a note of what was laid on our desks here. There was really a marvelous ceremony for both of these amazing people that have served our state. And you have on your desk here a wonderful booklet with history and pictures, and it was put here by Mr. Bruce Bariano, who had put this on our desks for us. It was produced a while ago, but it's in honor of Governor Mandel. I just got to thinking, and then when we heard about the passing of former Senator Levitan, when I first got down here, he was often at the same hotel that I was at, and I would sit in the back room, and he would tell stories. And it was a great introduction for me, being a young new legislator, but also, my family. I'm looking forward to sharing this with my father because he's a big history buff, and so am I. But, our family moved here in the early 90s when I was a kid. So I didn't know some of this history. And of course, a lot of folks may not know it even back in our communities, but especially if you didn't grow up here. And so it's really neat to be able to see pictures and get some of the background of how a lot of things that we deal with every day came to be. So I just wanted to take a moment to mark this, and I think, at your leisure to look through it is really great. It's just some amazing, Governor Mandel obviously traveled through a lot of very interesting circles in his time in his career. So just wanted to make a note of this is great, and look forward to sharing it with other folks.
Most certainly. Thank you, Senator. Thanks for that reflection and thought. And we're normally very hesitant to distribute, but this felt appropriate that given the history and the occasion. Yes, Senator from the 21st.
I apologize, Mr. President. The senator stimulated my memory of Governor Mandel.
Please.
And I remember he and I served on the Board of Regents of the University System of Maryland early in the last decade. And I remember at dinner him regaling me. He knew that I'd been U.S. Ambassador to Romania. And he was very active in the National Governors Association and traveled around the world. And he regaled me on having dinner with Nicolae Ceausescu, who was the dictator of Romania from the mid-'60s until 1989 when the wall came down. So he's one of the few people I ever met who actually had dinner with dictator Ceausescu.
Fascinating. You never know. You never know. That's fascinating. All right, excellent. Anything else for the good of the order? If not, Madam Clerk, if we could do a quorum call.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 42 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I might add, as far as Larry Levitan goes, or Senator Larry Levitan, I will miss his phone calls. He stayed up pretty good on social media and would anything that he saw that he didn't like, I got a phone call about. And so I will miss having those spirited phone calls from him. He was such a good friend, and he represented my area forever. So it was just a kind of a sad thing to see this morning, because I will really miss those phone calls. Anyway, I would like to move that the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Thursday, March 21st at 10 a.m. in honor of Senator Larry Levitan.
Without objection, so ordered. Have a wonderful day, everyone. See you tomorrow.